Hi, I'm Kate from Kate&Barrel Designs, located in Tucson, Arizona. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create this amazing rustic finished look using layers of paint. I'm starting out with this gorgeous solid wood 3-drawer dresser that I found on Craigslist, and I'm utilizing the first color, which is going to be Weizel's Mandarina. Mandarina is a beautiful orange. If I was going to only be using Mandarina and not distressing back, I would utilize my gray primer underneath to help with color coverage. Mandarina is a thinner kind of color, and so it does take a few more coats to obtain coverage. So you guys will see as I start to put this on that it's a really, really gorgeous orange. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just getting the first coat and finished layer on. Okay, so now that I've gotten that first layer onto the dresser, I'm going to go ahead and apply a second coat. Because I'm going to be distressing back and doing a lot of layering on this piece, I want to make sure that I have a really, really solid base coat. So that's why I'm still going to go ahead and do 2 coats of the Mandarina. Because again, this is my base coat. This is what I want to be my strong color rendering underneath all the other colors. And you'll see as we go through the phases how this is going to change. I've also changed up my brush. I'm utilizing a Klingon brush now. It's one of the ovals, I believe. And so I'm going to go ahead and just keep applying this and putting on this second coat. So now I'm going to go ahead, and you'll see I didn't actually do full coverage in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and use Bowie Blue as my next color. So I have zero patience for waiting for paint to dry. So I went ahead and started applying the Bowie over the Mandarina. What I really like that happened here, which is kind of a happy accident because I wasn't thinking about my color rendering at that point when I started this, and things like this happen all the time. This project was not 100% fully planned out when I started to work on it, but the development of it turned out to be really cool because you can see when part of the wet paint that's in the Mandarina color hit the Bowie, of course, it turned slightly green, which was great because it added almost an extra color because I'm only using 3 colors on this piece. So it added an extra color that hadn't even been thought of and also added a nice extra touch to that kind of patina feel that I was going for. And while this is patina, it's not your typical like copper kind of patina. This is like rusty, crusty layers of colors, texture, kind of patina that we're going to be going for. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to apply the Bowie so you can see how that ends up looking over the Mandarina. Okay, so my third step, second to third step process was to bring in this third color. So I'm utilizing Icelandic Mist, which is a really light minty green color. And you kind of can't see how minty green it is against the Bowie and the Mandarina. You can also see in this clip that there are those green hues that you can see between the combination of the Mandarina and how it created that green. And then you can also see I didn't do full coverage on my Bowie. So Bowie was not a full coverage technique. So I left some of the Mandarina peeking through. Again, this was kind of me just playing around, using the colors that I knew I wanted to apply to the piece, not necessarily 100% sure about how I was going to achieve everything that I wanted to with this piece. But basically what I'm doing is I have the Icelandic Mist. Some places I'm going on really, really heavy, and some places I'm just kind of doing almost like a dry brush. So I'm just kind of getting it on there. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Um, that's kind of the great thing about this technique. There's no perfection needed. You can just go ahead and kind of have fun, and you're recreating what you want to be layers of like aged looking paint, right? So in that aspect, it doesn't have to be perfection. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and just continue to apply the Icelandic Mist, and we'll get ready for the next. So after I got my Icelandic Mist onto the piece, again, kind of haphazardly, I kind of took a step back and went, huh, okay, what am I going to do now? So I decided to grab some more Bowie and a new brush basically, and got out my spray bottle mister and went ahead and just started to apply a thin layer of the Bowie, and then also blend it in areas with the Icelandic Mist. So not my original plan again, but I like how this started kind of blending and coming together. So I just kept kind of adding some layers of the Bowie, bringing it in, and doing a blending technique over the Icelandic Mist. So after finishing and getting the Bowie and the Icelandic Mist kind of covered on there, here's where some more happy accidents come together. I decided to grab my spatula knife that I have. It's basically a putty knife, right? Or spatula knife, plastic or metal. I just had the metal on hand, so that's what I ended up using. And I grabbed the Mandarina and basically just went ahead and started swiping the paint on. I didn't go, and I'm not going to go heavy and all over the dresser. Basically, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I wanted to accent kind of those edges. Um, so this is a really interesting thing. I started to do some kind of dripping. I am not necessarily a huge fan of dripping, hence here comes the paper towel, and don't always like the way that it looks out or turns out on my pieces. So I ended up going back and almost doing a white back on this, and so that's what I ended up doing, to the point where I think wiped off a little bit of paint because I rubbed so incredibly hard. And it hasn't obviously been sealed yet and was wet too, so had the ability to just come right off. But again, a happy accident because again, I'm distressing this piece in the end, so it's going to help with that kind of step. So I just kind of continue to go through and play around and try different things. Because I did the Mandarina on that side, I will of course match up the other side to kind of give it that same So after finishing up with the two sides of the dresser, I'm now coming back to the front because I gave it enough time to dry. Remember how I mentioned previously that I'm not a huge fan of drips? Well, you can see that I'm coming back through. I'm using, I used the Bowie and I cleaned up that drip because I wasn't quite a fan. So here I have decided, okay, I'm going to try something different. I wanted a little bit more layered. I wanted a little bit more textured. So I decided to go a little nuts. I took out my 1 inch brush that I love. It's my Wise Owl Premium brush, and I use it for stippling all the time. You can use it for stenciling as well. It's a great size, and it's perfect to add texture. And I grab my Icelandic Mist, and you can see basically what I'm doing is pouncing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and creating texture with the paint on my brush. And some areas are heavy and some areas are light. And then I'm doing the same thing, so I completely did one edge, right? One side of the dresser in the Icelandic Mist. And now what I'm doing is I'm coming through and I'm doing the same thing on the other side of the dresser with the Mandarina. So I really like the Mandarina on that side, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to bring it all the way through. So I started adding it into the corners and the edges, and again, I'm just pouncing and stippling up and down all over the dresser. Some parts are heavy, some parts are light. Uh, my friends and I like to call this the hot mess of painting because when you look at what I'm doing right now, you kind of are probably thinking, oh my gosh, she's lost her mind. This looks really interesting, but definitely isn't where I want it to finish. And as I'm waiting for what I've just done to dry, I've gone ahead and grabbed my putty knife again, and I'm just going ahead and applying some more of that Mandarina to add that different kind of grit texture as well. So after I finished up adding all the different colors and texture, I decided Bowie was going to be my main top color no matter what. And I knew that was how this piece is going to end. So I had to bring the Bowie back in over. And instead of doing a back and forth with heavy paint, I decided to do a light stipple effect that you can see that I'm doing here. On this one, I'm just using my Wise Owl brush. It's an 030. And again, I'm just doing that stippling up and down effect. I don't have heavy, heavy paint on my brush. In some parts, I'm almost dry brushing over. And then other parts, again, I'm just doing that stipple up and down. Notice too that there are areas where I will leave some of the orange and some of the Icelandic Mist for it to still be there. So I'm not going to cover absolutely everything. And that Mandarina and that Bowie, because the Mandarina is still a little damp, is going to create that extra nice kind of green, greeny brown, almost kind of rusty color to it. So I'll just continue to bring the Bowie through to add that new effect over the top. So you can see also on the video that it looks splotchy in certain areas. Remember, I have different layers. Some are heavy, some are lighter that I'm putting on this piece. And that being said, it's drying splotchy. So a lot of those spots that you see that are super dark are still wet, where others are light because I don't have as much paint in there. So just remember, before you make any final decisions, let everything dry. So my original plan was going to be a wet distress on this piece. So I've gone ahead, I've gotten my shop towel out, I have my mister, I'm wetting my shop towel down. Well, sometimes you have a plan and your plan doesn't always go the way you want it to. I did not like the way that the wet distress was happening with the colors and how it was affecting and or not affecting. It just wasn't this technique for a wet distress just was not enough for me. So you'll see I'm kind of going through, I'm using the shop towel and it's wet, but I just wasn't necessarily 100% happy with what was happening here. So after kind of mucking around with the wet distressing for a couple minutes, I decided, no, this isn't going to work. So I figured, okay, well, I'll just try a sheet of sandpaper and I'm going to go ahead and sand up across the edges. So you can see I'm trying to sand, well, not trying, I am sanding on the edges to pull back some of the paint. I wasn't happy with the result. It just still wasn't as aggressive as I wanted it to be. Granted, you can see I do the white back on that and you can see that, yes, I was able to heavily distress it. There's quite a bit of orange coming through. You can even see that greeny tinge. But it still wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more of the distressing. I wanted to show wood too. So I wanted it to go all the way to the wood and then be able to show the Icelandic Mist, the Bowie, some of that kind of green patina that I've got going on in there. So what did I do? Well, I took out my Surf Prep Pro. So you guys aren't all necessarily going to have a Surf Prep Pro, and I understand that. But if you can get a sander that has the ability to utilize a foam sanding pad, that would be advantageous for this kind of step. So I'm using the medium grit and I'm just going through and sanding over lightly the kind of middle areas, and then when I get to the edges of the drawer, you can see I go through and I kind of press a little bit harder because I want it to be a little bit more of an aggressive distress. And now what I'm doing is I'm going up the sides and we'll just continue sanding this entire piece. After I finish up sanding, I let the piece sit for an entire day. So I wanted my paint to obviously settle and make sure that it was the best adhesion that it could possibly be before I went ahead and applied my clear wax. So I'm actually, for my clear wax, I'm using the 1.5 inch round brush, and then I'm using Wise Owl's clear wax. I love Wise Owl's clear wax. It is the easiest wax I've ever used. It doesn't get sticky. It's not hard to wipe it off, and it just works absolutely fantastic. You can see the color deepening and the richness of all the colors coming through as I go ahead and just kind of apply this. Sorry about the lighting. I'm just going to say that. I apologize. I didn't realize that it was doing that when I was taking the video. The door to the studio was open, and so some light was coming in. And so that's why when I hit this angle, you can feel that glare. So I apologize about that glare. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue applying my clear wax over my paint. So after I finish waxing, typically I would wait uh, 12 to 24 hours before going ahead and wiping off. I like my wax to sit and soak in and dry as much as possible on its own. But however, for this video, I wanted to just show you how I like to do my wipe off for my wax. So I use not a shop towel, but a microfiber cloth. You can get them, they're your microfiber cleaning cloths that you would use, or like a dusting cloth basically. And you can get them on Amazon, Home Depot, I mean pretty much any cleaning store, Target, wherever you can go to get things like that, you're going to be able to find a microfiber towel. And basically what I do is I just wipe back and forth, and I'm essentially getting any excess off, but also rubbing the wax back into the paint as well. So I'm ensuring that anything that hasn't dried yet is getting pushed back in and adding that extra protection. And then I'm also, at the same time, the cloth is grabbing any of the excess that just won't soak in because it's just too much. So again, the clear wax from Wise Owl, so easy to use. No stickiness, nice and smooth too, because it sanded down the piece. So even though it looks textured, it feels buttery smooth, which is so nice. Okay, last but certainly not least, I love using salve over raw wood. So I have the 2-inch palm brush, tobacco flower scented salve, and I had already previously sanded the finish off, the original finish off of this dresser. It is not perfect, and I'm okay with that because, and when I say it's not perfect, I say there's a few marks or things like that that didn't 100% come out. However, it's perfect for the patina and age of the dresser. It does not affect the use by any means. And basically, after sanding this down and making it all nice and smooth, I just want to seal the wood up. So I want it to have that natural raw wood look, but still be sealed and protected at the same time. So I love the salve for this. It is so simple and fantastic. I also salve all the insides of my drawers as well. So all the dresser drawers receive nourishment from the salve, because not only is it going to give that layer of protection, it's also going to provide deodorizing, and it's also going to re-nourish. So a lot of times people forget on these older pieces, you know, those drawers, those wooden drawer bottoms and sides and things like that are the most neglected. They're not the ones that are polished and taken care of. And living in the desert, it's definitely something we want to do to make sure that we're reconditioning the piece inside and out. So that's why I just love the salve. After I go ahead and get a coat of salve on there, I let it soak in, and then I'm just walking around making sure I got all the edges and sides. Um, put the lid back on. Don't leave the lid hanging out off of your salve. You want to put that lid back on. So then what I do is I'm just going to grab a shop towel, and with that shop towel, just wipe off any excess that's still sitting on the top that hasn't had a chance to soak in yet. After salving, we'll set this beauty up and get some final photos. I absolutely loved completing this finish. It worked out perfectly and created that layered look. Please leave comments below. I will link all the products as well, and hit that subscribe button to see more videos. Thanks so much.